This conference will now be recorded.
Just call me Swifty from now on. Regarding recommending approval of resolution 2024-08, supporting October 2024 as Pedestrian Safety Month. And then go ahead, Jane. She told me to pass it to you,
I
Jane.
didn't want to talk the whole time, so she gave this one to me. If you've been around, we've historically done October's Walk to School Month. It's also Pedestrian Safety Month, and we're switching to that this year because one, safety is a big deal, and at the policy board level, they're really wanting to push more safety. There, in the resolution, you'll see it still mentions Walk to School Day. We want to support that, encourage that, but pedestrian safety, specifically pedestrian safety, is a big issue. Last week, there was a meeting of all the NPOs in Texas, and Texas A&M has a transportation institute, and they're helping do some safety work, and they had some slides on fatalities and serious injuries throughout the state and NPOs, and they highlighted pedestrians as a significant issue for statewide. In the resolution, there's just some numbers. In the 5-year period from 2018 to 2022, there was 51 total fatal crashes involving pedestrians and 80 serious injury crashes, so 131 total. And that in that period, so 2022, the numbers were double what they were in 2018. I think that's been a trend nationwide, and it's sad, but that's kind of some of the reasons we're wanting to shift to more of a focus on pedestrian safety and still also encouraging Walk to School Month. And I think there's a note that Anita added in about the need for better infrastructure. If we want safety, we need better infrastructure, and so encouraging that. Yeah, that's the report.
Question for the forum. If anyone is familiar with ride to school pelotons. My daughter lives in Austin, and parents will rally grade school kids, ride by their house at 7:30 in the morning, and kids come out of their houses and hop on their bikes and ride through the neighborhood to school. And it's really cool to see a dozen kids falling in behind a dad or a mom on a neighborhood street. And they're quite conspicuous, and makes it look like it's really fun to go to school.
And actually, they did talk about that at the conference that we were at. They actually highlighted that event.
I think it's a great model that we should consider. I know we've had a lot of emphasis on safe routes to schools, but that's probably a hallmark of success when a parent can lead half a dozen kids through the neighborhood to school safely in the morning. Instead of riding a carpool, everybody gets on the bike when the weather's nice like it has been lately. It'd be interesting to try to get a finger on the pulse for whether that happens and how often that happens in our representative communities.
Did you have a specific name for that program, did you say, Kelly?
Just
No, okay.
organized by schools. They go to Bricker Woods Elementary. It's down like Mopac, Jefferson, Austin.
I think they said they did that every Wednesday.
Yes,
And it was
In
like
Austin.
in Austin, it was like every Wednesday the school bus would not run. And the parents would lead the ride to school. And it gathered a lot of connectivity to get parents to enjoy it and then also get some kids to go too. So.
This is a neighborhood school, and they live probably 10 blocks from school, and their plan was to walk to school anyway. And they saw a parent lead a bunch of kids on bikes, and they got them the bike loop.
and that's, I'm going to talk a little bit about this at the conference. They mentioned that if a school and a subdivision are situated within a 3-mile radius, that everything should become highly walkable in that 3-mile radius. You know, we should have grocery stores and schools and everything, just like when we're thinking subdivisions, that's how the model that we should be thinking about.
My youngest daughter lived in Boston and Chicago in kind of inner-city neighborhoods. And she went to college in LA, and one of her motivations in finding a place to live was a walkable neighborhood. She had an apartment that's walkable community with a grocery store, restaurants, and her
That's one of the things that Erick Cedeño mentioned, is that when he was looking for a place to move, that everything had to be within a 3-mile radius so that it would be a walkable community. And that's how he takes his son to school, and they do their whole life is about the quality of life. That's a good point. Thank you for sharing that.
I think that's admirable, and it looks like when you drive through some of these new subdivisions, that's number 6,090 on their list of priorities. There doesn't seem to be much consideration of that. I don't know if the city planners push that or who pushes it, but the developers sure don't seem to encourage walkability or bicycle ability.
That's something dealing with the city planners on this same topic of walking and rolling to school and stuff like that, is pushing that narrative that we need to change the rules and the policies as the city planners at the city level to say, hey, if you're developing something, this needs to be in your development plan. And I know there's new subdivision going in down by Dana Peak, and they've actually implemented in that plan, and it just improves the value of your life, but they've implemented a multi-use trail path within that subdivision that connects that subdivision to Dana Peak.
Oh.
So, so not only do you improve your property value and your quality of life by having that within your community and then connecting to Dana Peak, you can charge more for your house, especially if you're in a subdivision like that. And that was something that, we'll get to in the next agenda item, but something that they really talked about changing the policies of the cities and the counties. Instead of working on little small projects, work on a networking everything. And I think that's what this approving this, but how for this year, but for next year, and I think me and Anita need to get out and start pushing some of this stuff that we all agree on to get, hey, can we at least get one day to walk to roll to school on October 9th? It's short notice now. Maybe we can get a school to actually do that this year, and maybe get a couple schools to do that next year. Again, getting that red line moved to get it approved and have the right people doing it is where we're going to run into the problem. And it takes a bunch of people to get that working, just not me and Anita or the people in the room. Any other comments? Jeff just over there quiet and happy.
Could you speak just briefly to I like the phrase traffic calming measures. What all does that mean?
James, do you mind taking a deep dive on that, please?
It's kind of like it's sort of an engineering planning term, just making drivers more likely to drive slower. So you can do things like if you narrow the lanes or you add bump outs, like on a neighborhood street, when you're driving, you see it's less space, and so you'll naturally slow down, adding roundabouts, bumps. So vegetation, there's a lot of different things, but it's anything that is gonna get traffic to not speed through a neighborhood or speed through an area, to slow them down. That's, in a nutshell, that's what it is.
Sure. Thank you.
And that's something that let's finish it before we go on to the other stuff, because we'll really get tied up in the other stuff really quick. Any other comments? Motion to approve the resolution for 2024. Joe approves, second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Nays? Nobody? Motion's approved. Okay. Agenda item number 8 that we've been dying to get to, the Texas Trails and Active Transportation Conference. It's a biannual why people use complicated words for a guy that doesn't have a college education. Texas Trails and Active Transportation Conference was held on September 4th through 6th. It brought together those involved with bicycle, pedestrian, and other active transportation and recreation modes from around Texas and the world. Texas Parks and Wildlife and Bike Texas were the sponsors, the BPAC chair and Anita Jenke and Lisa also went with us. I attended the conference and will highlight key lessons learned and best practices. Next slide. So basically I touched on 4 or 5 different items within the conference. This was, I noticed a lot of times they used older stats. This is a stat from 2022. I believe it came out of a TechStop thing, but 75% of the people surveyed don't feel safe using active transportation. That means just because it's better doesn't mean it's nothing. Better than nothing was the term they used. So yeah, you put a bike path in a bike lane on a road, that's better than nothing. But you put the bike path and then you put parking on the right side of the bike path, stuff like that. You don't feel any safer just because there's a bike path. Now you've got traffic and people trying to do the parking, and we've all seen it. So they talk more about protected bike lanes, additional lighting, and stuff like that. If you ever get a chance to go down to Austin and ride their bike lanes, they're protected. It's basically the way it's designed, and it's something that the cities in Bell County should look at. It's walking, protected bike lane, parking, and then the roads you're driving on. So when you look at it and see it without 50 people on a bike, because we did it with 50 people on bicycles, it's effective and it works. Their next biggest project, I think, that they're working on is going to be Congress, from the Congress Bridge all the way up to the state capitol. And if you've ever ridden that road, we rode that road. It's pretty crazy. It's that same setup. The other thing that I want to look at next year, I know we have the 2040 plan, but making that connectivity between what we already have existing and going forward, we're working on projects for like safer roads to schools, stuff like that, where we're making these small projects. I start thinking of a more diverse thing of, let's think networking. How can we connect us to Bell County, Temple to Belton to Nolanville? How do we connect those connectivities to the schools and within everything else? Roadway crossings is another one. We, just as an example on that, we've tried to do a plan to ride a bicycle from the Grove, Texas, which is out on 36, into Temple to where our business is. There's nothing really safe about that entire journey unless you go way north and then come back down south. So it's kind of the same thing if you're trying to go from here to Belton. We're still working on the trails. Still working on the trails and that connectivity, but that connectivity will drive pretty much everything. Healthier living, it'll drive businesses, getting more people out to the businesses, being able to walk, ride, skateboard, anything on wheels, anything that's active transportation. And they take everything into consideration. Next slide.
May I
Yeah, go ahead.
comment on this? This little thing to the far right, that costs $35,000. It's a pedestrian and bike head counter. So it's right downtown as you pass Zilker Park. And it was really exciting to see because it counts every single bike that crosses in a 50-foot span, every single pedestrian, and it helps them determine where their foot traffic is at and what they can do and the time of day during events. But TTI, they have one that we can borrow. It's a loaner program. It's not as fancy as this one. That's very fancy, as you can see. But I think the city of Belton has already emailed to find out about it. So I'm going to do some research and see what we can do about getting on their list to get that into our region, to do some pedestrian and bike counts on some certain areas. Another thing that I'd like to follow up with or tag on that Gary mentioned is the idea that when you think about bikes and pedestrians, they really want us to not think about a bike lane, but they want us to think about a bike network or a pedestrian network. Let's start thinking networks, like we just don't want to have a bike lane or a sidewalk or a shared use path. We want to start thinking about networks. How are we going to network across to the next jurisdiction and even beyond our own boundaries? So that's, I thought that was real exciting and very forward thinking.
Anita, on that counter, who sees that? Where, when it's actively counting people, is that something in a downtown office, somebody sees the count or?
Yeah, well, the public can see it right in real time.
Okay.
The public sees it. And so it, what they explained about that is that will justify more bond money. Like, you know, if on a Saturday when they have an event and they have 1,200 people walking that path within 3 hours and they don't have adequate crosswalks or sidewalks or anything like that, it helped justify requesting more money. So it's in real time, but it is also managed by their program. It's a bike ped program through the city of Austin.
And it'll actually track mass groups of people rather than just saying that's one person. It'll pick up all, like we rode by it and it went from, we had 50 people, I think it went from 36 to 70 people as we rode by. So it'll identify more than just, than you're thinking like, if 1,200 people walk by, it's going to identify everybody in the whole group.
And there's a camera that's about 50 feet away. And so it catches you going both directions.
So it's something to think about whenever, this is just stuff that's something to think about when we go into this design plan. I know we approve stuff 7, 8 years down the road. But when we're going into the design or changing stuff, I really like to see the city start changing the plan and implementing this into the builder's problem rather than an afterthought. So this is another program. I personally thought it was misquoted several times. When you're gonna build anything within your city, the idea of if you can create a trail, whatever you're creating, bike path, trail, multi-use, park, whatever, if you can create it for somebody that's 8 years old and 80 years old, not 8 through 80, those two demographics in general, you'll create it for everybody. So if you create it for, and they actually had some, if you go to their website, which I posted on there, they'll actually show where they show 80-year-old people, older generation people, working with the younger generation because they've implemented the plan into, hey, now we've got these two separate things working together and it creates a better city environment for everybody. And Austin did that on their bike path. They've implemented a playground that's not only, it looked like to me it was more than just a children's playground. It gave activities pretty much for everybody. We didn't get a chance to ride in there and check it all out. But when you looked at it, it implemented, you could walk there, you could ride there. It gave something for the older generation to do. It gave something for the younger generation, and let you mingle and build a community rather than just, hey, look, I'm on a bike and zoom, there I go. Let's run over the pedestrian. Pretty interesting concept, and everybody that seemed to have used it that we talked to, that I talked to, seemed to, it works. It only requires those two age groups and you'll make a community for everybody. So when everything, I brought this slide up because everything starts with an idea. This is a concept, this is an idea. The guy that is currently behind this movement, his name is Charlie Grady. Very interesting guy. He's done pretty much every trail you'd ever want to think about. The HE Trail, the Pacific Coast Trail, the Continental Divide Trail. There's a trail across Arizona. This is his idea. He started working on a couple of years ago. He started to see if this model and this route works. It's basically a multi-use path for horseback, walkers, hikers, and cyclists to go from Orange, Texas, which is on the Louisiana border, all the way up into El Paso without trying to stay off the roads. So he left the conference and went to Orange, Texas, and him and some of his financial advisors have started this route to make sure that they could do it, encompassing a lot of the different areas
Yeah, it goes between Austin and us, Austin and San Antonio. But it encompasses the entire, what Texas is all about. I don't know if you're from the Panhandle, but if you've been up there, there's two things up there, sunlight and wind. So this encompasses kind of everything. And then it goes down into South Texas, and I always forget the name of it. What's the?
Big Ben.
Big goes into Big Ben, and he's currently looking for routes. So if you go to his website and you're an avid cyclist or somebody that wants to hike and stuff like that, he's definitely somebody to contact, and he's always looking for somebody to go through and find people on trail. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the Pacific Coast Trail or the Great Divide Trail. They have trail angels and people like that that assist people that decide to do something crazy like this. And there's people out there that do it. On the right side, this is the newest stat from Texas State Parks. Looking at what else you have in your cities that are part of active transportation. One of the things that we plan on bringing into this meeting, we brought the equestrians in kind of this year, but also the paddlers. So I didn't know this, but Morgan's Point has a paddle course. I guess, help me out with this.
The paddle trail, it's a certified paddle kayaking trail by the Texas State Park. It actually existed 2013, I believe, is when it came into existence.
This is something I learned at this
It's a
conference.
mile or two long. It starts at the Morgan's Point Marina and goes north. It's pretty scenic. Takes you right up against some limestone cliffs I had never seen before. Kind of over near Cedar Ridge Marina Park. Yeah, it was.
And one of the interesting facts with the fishing, wildlife, and game management, if you look at those stats, 18.8 million users and only 15.8 million users are Texas residents. And the amount of money they spend on this kind of stuff, hunting and fishing and stuff like that, it's a resource for everybody to get throughout their cities. What can we do to make the improvements and stuff like that?
So that's not what Texas Parks spends, that's what the visitors spend. Yes. Among those areas.
That's a big chunk of change. And for the paddling and stuff like that, it's a very unique program. Not every city within Bell County has access or resources to, have a paddle route. They do seasonal, so if you do have a river going through that's seasonal, they'll actually have the funds, and they've got the funds, but they don't have a lot of people progressing into getting the putting in the paperwork to do it. And it's voted on by not the Texas State Parks or anything like that. They actually hire people that are part of the paddle community and stuff like that, and they take a vote on that and say, this is the project that we want. They do the signs and everything for it, and it doesn't have to be a huge access point. It can be access point off the side of the road as long as you have someplace to park and drop your boat in. Same thing with hunting, same thing with the fishing. But there's programs out there, and you'd be amazed at the amount of dollars that were at this. People talk about at this convention.
Those numbers would say that every one of those visitors spends $2,000 visiting. That's why I do bike for every trip.
Or fishing pole.
Or a fishing pole. Those are pretty expensive too. So it's something to look into as a resource for anybody that's developing their community. Next slide. Okay, we got one more. And then we talk about the cave people. That was a big concept for me, the cave people, because you're always going to find somebody. You can't make everybody happy all the time. But there's always going to be that one person. Citizens against virtually everything, and we run into that. But again, we need to build networks and communities and stop it. We look at the projects, but how does that represent into the community? And how is that making that network valuable to everybody? And surprisingly enough, some of the cities that people should look at, if you're looking at like model cities, the Dallas Loop up in Dallas, they just finished a loop that goes all the way around Dallas. Amazing work. They figured out how to get it across train crossings, which seems to be a huge problem and issue. Something that I know if Jason's still online, get with those guys in Dallas to figure out how we can get across the railroad tracks using the train stuff. They've mastered that. They're experts at it. We have their point of contacts. And then Brownsville. Go down to Brownsville and check out what they've done. That small community started off and said, this is what we're going to do. And they did it. They've built a community and a network system down there where they've expanded their challenge going around their network rather than, they wanted to put a road in. It was going to be a toll road, and 5,000 people said, no, we're not. We're making this a multi-use trail. And of course they have, that's why I think I got the cave people from. But they had people that didn't want to, but then there was people that were very thankful that they could go, now didn't have to go all the way around the railroad track like in Nolanville. If the train stopped in Nolanville, you're pretty much waiting for the train to move.
Yeah.
So stuff like that, they've actually got around that problem. Get that, Jason?
I did. And I'll say thanks to the MPO policy board, we've got money for both phases of the railroad trail in Temple. We just got to get a water line in the ground first, and then we'll start building the trail. But yeah, there's other connections to be made, extend that trail to Temple. And there's other places where we do have a lot of at-grade railroad crossings, whether it's a trail or a sidewalk near a school zone. Yep, there's plenty of challenges. So yeah.
Did you say it's funded now from Belton all the way to Temple?
It's funded from the Leon River over to 5th Street. But we've got to get a 30-inch water line in the ground before we start doing trail construction. Otherwise, we're going to rip out every bit that we just built.
I saw they were moving some crushed granite across the railroad track today. Probably put power lines in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
How about the bridge? Is the bridge funded yet?
Which bridge? For the
Leon River Bridge. Leon River Bridge.
Yeah, that's part of the phase 2.
The funded phase or the yet to be funded phase?
Both phases are funded.
Oh, wow.
Yep, we got money for phase 2 this year during the project call. We made a deal. We made a deal with
infrastructure improvement.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I can't hear you.
I think I walked on you too. Is that money related to the Infrastructure Improvement Act?
Not directly, other than that there's more money coming down through the UTP and the TIP than we have in the past.
It comes to the NPO. The NPO is funded through that bill.
Yeah.
And that's where the funding for the bridge is coming from.
Do you have any kind of timeline estimate, Jason?
Probably FY27. Like I said, we've got to complete the water line between 5th Street and 31st Street. That's going in first. And if you drive by there, they're working on it now. So that immediately when that's done, we'll start the work on phase 1 to do the trail. And then following that, we'll do the work on phase 2 to go from 31st Street over to the historic MKT bridge. We had a project that scored higher, but presented it to TAC that this is the more important one for the region. They agreed. So we pulled our sidewalk project on 3rd Street, added the trail. Belton's looking at the trail on their side. They scored high this go around, but around the time that we were making the decisions on the funding scenario was when TxDOT announced all the public engagement for 35 widening. Talked to Sam Listy, their city manager. They're not moving forward with trail construction right now because they feel it would be a case of they would build it, and then during the I-35 construction, all that work will get torn out. But what that gives an opportunity is to do, I think, what Gary was talking about, with a pedestrian or bike overpass over the railroad like Dallas did. Can we work some type of trail overpass into the I-35 widening? And I think there is, because they're going to have to reconstruct FM 93, 6th Street, that whole interchange area. There's more than likely going to be an opportunity to do something there that gets folks all the way down the railroad trail, across the Taylor's Valley Road area, and then over the highway into downtown Temple. So it may be a few years out, but I think we'll see that construction done at least before I retire.
So Jason,
Hold you to
Young
that.
man.
hey, Jason, so one of the things that Dallas had success with and a couple other places that we talked to was
Yeah.
having TxDOT fund that part of the trail as
Sure.
part of their plan.
Yep.
Have you guys looked into that?
Not into the level of adding it to the design schematics. They haven't even completed those yet.
Yeah.
Now, I'll say I haven't had those conversations. I won't speak for Sam Listy. I don't know if anybody from Belton's at the meeting, but Sam's not one to let moss grow on him. I'd be willing to bet he's having those discussions.
Well, if there's anything I can do to help or Anita, because she loves working hard, let me know or let anybody else here that you think could help. Because I know they've had a lot of success working with TxDOT, especially on that Dallas trail. TxDOT paid for like 8-9 miles of their frontage road, elevated multi-use path on that. So yeah, if we can make TxDOT pay for it, we can build more network.
I'm all about spending someone else's money. That's why I'm a good government employee, right? Go, you can say it, Gary.
Hey, you knew I was thinking it.
Jason, did you say the water main was from 5th to 31st or 31st to the Leon River?
I think it goes farther and it goes past 5th Street as well. I just know that's the part that conflicts with the trail.
Between 31st and 5th?
Right. It goes, I want to say it makes a bend and goes all the way up towards the industrial park where the Panda Power Plant is, and some of the economic development industrial projects we've got going out there. It's part of it is to serve that, to enable that development, and as well as all the residential growth we're seeing down in that area. But it's a public works project, so I don't know the full extent of it. I just know that it's making my trail get delayed.
Shame we couldn't have them pay for it too, huh?
Well, actually, we're getting we're getting way off in the weeds. I'll just answer the question, then I should shut up. One of the things we worked into that contract is they finished installing the line and they closed the trench. That the grading of the trench is going to support the installation of the trail. We won't have to come in and start regrading like it was a new project. It'll already be cleared and graded when they're ready to start moving in. So we actually did spend some of their money on that one. It made sense.
I like you more and more every day, Jason.
I mean, you might even buy me a beer one of these days.
Yeah. You never show up at the meeting.
If I did, I think Anita would yell at us if we started drinking booze in the middle of her conference.
Yeah.
All right, I will stop derailing the meeting.
Okay.
Y'all keep going.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Jim, another question about that? I gotta take a picture of your question. That was one of them, right? What was the other one?
Yeah, my question was, does the Bipartisan Infrastructure Improvement Act create tangible benefits for the concerns of this committee?
I would say,
You know, James, are we going deeper down our list of priorities or?
The act is, well, in basic terms, the NPO has a pot of money that is specifically for active transportation projects. When the IJ was passed, that pot doubled from 400,000 to 850, 900,000. So it could increase going forward if they repass it and they want to try and add more money, but that's the most direct, tangible.
That doesn't sound like much, because the project like this trail between Temple and Belton was on the order of tens of millions.
I think, Jason, was it 4.5 that we've given around about for the Temple portion of the trail?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And James, we were talking this morning in TAC about the Highway Safety Improvement Program, the safety projects that TxDOT funds in the past has been a 90-10 match. This year it's 100%.
Yeah. And yeah, it's 800,000, it's still double, and we only get to use what we're given, and we're given more, so if, and to answer your question about is there impacts, yes, there's impacts. Maybe not as much as people would like, but if you would like more money, talk to your legislature, your congressperson, because they're the ones that give us the money.
Leaning on them to improve the schools first.
Well, lots of things they can do for us, right?
And next slide. This would be it.
Yes, so back to the idea that you can't plan for bikes without planning for all modes. And when you're thinking about a bike lane, think about a network, multi-jurisdictional. The cycling and the walking, there is a huge emphasis on short distances. Subdivisions that are built that have everything within a 3-mile radius they have the highest quality of life. You can walk to school, you can walk to your grocery store. So they really encourage that planners to think about the optimal mix is when we're planning to promote cycling and walking, when public transit is the next step, and for longer distances, cars. Of course, we live in a region that if you're commuting 40 miles to your place of employment, you're going to need a car. But still, as we continue to grow, and we're outpacing our growth right now, those are things to be thinking about to improve the quality of life. And then also, I went to one of the workshops, and it was TechStop. They were working on a bike ped network for the state, and they were working on the outskirts of the state of Texas. So they've already completed 2 districts, and they're 25 to 26. They'll be working on 4 other districts, which are to the far by the El Paso area, going all the way up to the Panhandle. And one of the things that they mentioned is, because I asked when they were going to be working on our district, and they said that it's not in the foreseeable future, but one of the things that we could do, and it's going to be, we'll talk about this shortly, is to develop an active transportation master plan. So that would get us at least to the table to start talking about a bike ped plan with TechStop. Oh, and here we are.
And speaking of the active transportation master plan, agenda item number 9. The background is in 2011, Killeen-Temple revised a regional thoroughfare pedestrian bicycle plan to reflect the substantial advancements made by member jurisdictions in bicycle facility planning since the plan's inception in 2008. The original purpose of the regional thoroughfare and pedestrian bicycle plan was to establish a progressive framework for the region's transportation system. This plan outlined forward-looking vision essential for maintaining mobility and realizing the region's future transportation goals. Staff recommendations. As the region continues to grow, Killeen-Temple staff recommends developing an active transportation master plan that identifies regional and multi-jurisdictional trail networks within the Killeen-Temple region that connects beyond our borders and encourage innovative strategies for promoting walking, cycling, and other forms of active transportation. This initiative aims to build upon a framework established by the RMP, ensuring that our active transportation system supports and encourages healthy, sustainable, and efficient mobility options for all the people of all ages. By creating a dedicated active transportation master plan, we seek to optimize on resources, address current needs, integrate best practices, and outline actionable steps for a more connected and accessible multi-jurisdictional transportation network. I think this kind of falls in at the end, open for discussion. This kind of falls in, I think, with what Eric was going to do for us. What he is really good at is relating history with commuting and getting around, and he was gonna look at Bell County, what we had in a historical perspective and what he would think would be like, what would be a bike path for that. And I think that's where we're kind of looking at, similar to this, would be how do we connect all of this together, is what I kind of get the idea of what this active transportation plan.
Yes, and so, I don't know if y'all remember, last year, or maybe it was, almost 2 years ago, we had the Great Springs Project come and, present, and they're the ones that are leading that, trail from San Antonio, the Alamo, all the way up to the Capitol. It's a 100-mile trail. They've made a lot of headway on that. It's going great. Bicyclists, walkers, it's multi-use. And then there's 4 other trails that cross jurisdictions, and they're multi-jurisdictional trail networks. And so I was thinking that as we continue to really promote active transportation, one of the ideas for our region should be to be thinking beyond our own boundaries. I know that there's a trail in Williamson County, so somehow, wouldn't it be nice if we captured a vision for that, where that trail is at, and somehow started thinking about, building a connector there, or at least in the planning stages. I know that, Jeff, you had mentioned that you're working on the trail in Crawford Cove. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
So it's just really along the I-14 corridor, trying to connect CTC with Crawford Cove with a multi-trail for cyclists and walkers. Because currently there's nothing there other than to get there by car. So it's not that far of a distance, and so I think that, we've been talking about it. We haven't put anything in motion.
Right. Vision, just casting vision. So if anybody else is aware of those types of trails, but I think that our best effort should be to start working on an active transportation master plan. And I really believe that the BPAC committee are the ones that should sort of be leading that process. The ideas of it, input, getting together so that we can lay the foundation of what a multi-jurisdictional trail would look like for our region. Got a lot of great minds in here.
Years ago, there was a proposal to create a dam-to-dam road that connected Belton Dam to Stillhouse Hollow Dam. Does anybody know the state of that? It was controversial. Some landowners didn't want to sell land. And I don't know if it was scuttled or just put on the back burner. It's still planned or not. But that would be a pretty attractive cycling route if you're going to build a new roadway anyway, to connect 2 pretty spectacular views. It's about I can't remember, maybe a 10-mile distance that would be doable by a lot of cyclists.
I wonder if Jason knows anything about it.
It's not happening anymore, or at least, Belton's interested in building their portion, but the biggest issue was crossing Army Corps land right there on the south side of that T intersection. And I know the Corps also was concerned about expanding the bridge across the dam because it's already over capacity. So I know the city is interested in south of that. There's a lot of right of way owned, and so building a new road. I don't remember what that subdivision is, but
It would go through Red Rock, across Dunn's
Yeah.
Canyon.
Yeah.
Basically, you go from Lake turning into whatever they would name this road, because they couldn't do it through the subdivision, like the neighborhood. But then it would go straight from Lake to Wheat, across, Wheat all the way, hitting, I think.
it'll go all the way down to I-14 eventually. That's the whole plan. But there would be a small gap where the current Lake Road and the Dam Road in that T intersection there, from that intersection across Army Corps land just to the south, there wouldn't be anything. There'd be a gap there. It wouldn't go through.
You'd have to turn left and then turn right to get on that.
Yeah.
Now, with this fall in line, and Jason may know this, or James may know this, does this kind of correlate with the
the 2040 plan, should we revisit that as a future implementation of this active transportation plan? 2040 plan to connect Temple to, I think it's a path to connect Temple to Killeen. Wasn't there originally a plan to do that, going through Belton, part of the stuff that just got approved, we just talked about?
Possibly. You're not talking about the 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, right?
Here comes Jason.
No, that was the question I was going to ask. I think, yeah, for the MTP, we've talked about that big picture regional connectivity. And like James pointed out, the Lake to Lake Road is really, it's a Belton initiative. They've got the right of way through the neighborhood. When it hit the news a couple of years back, everybody came out with pitchforks and torches because they insisted that someone told them that was a city green belt, and it was never a green belt. It was always intended, they purchased that right away, secured for future roadway. Before I left the MPO, Belton, the MPO staff, TxDOT, and Corps of Engineers sat down at the offices over there by Deadfish and talked through some of the issues. Like James pointed out, the roadway on the dam, it's not getting any wider and it's at capacity. The answer is then adding a bridge on either a whole new bridge, or the dam goes one way and the other bridge, the bridge goes the other way, so that you're adding, separated north-south lanes. And then the question is, if we're building a bridge, do we build it on the water side of the dam or the downhill side of the dam? There are arguments, I'll be very objective on this one. There are arguments for and against doing a bridge on either side of the dam. But the answer to get the capacity that would allow us to add some type of trail feature involves building that bridge. And right now, there's no funding for a bridge in our books or anybody else's books that I'm aware of.
But that would fall, but this would be kind of considered part of that 2050 plan though, right? If we tried to build this active transportation master plan?
It could be. It's worth talking about without getting into the weeds of where the bridge goes. If you build a 4-lane bridge, then you leave yourself 20 feet of pavement on top of the dam that could be converted to a pedestrian facility. And then that gives you an ability to connect from the dam going north. It's a short hop up to 2305, where Temple has pretty wide sidewalks and I would call shared use path in that area. Make that link. Get down to 439. Somebody can figure out how to, expand. There's some sidewalks going towards Belton from that area. So yeah, make it logical to continue expanding sidewalks down 439. It's worth talking about. There's nothing on the books that shows a design or a funding or alignment right now. So I would say, yeah, we could, if not the MTP, because we're pretty much finalized the adoption of that, probably that regional multimodal plan as part of this active transportation. Yeah, that's the appropriate place to put that.
So the way that I was envisioning this active transportation master plan, we'd be pulling out information out of the RMP, which was approved in 2018.
Yep.
And we'd be forward thinking about, okay, where are our trails right now? And lining all those up. Because we have to know where our existing trails are at. We have to understand the population growth and start thinking about future connectivity. I mean, I think that
yeah, I'm with you.
the vision Okay, go ahead, Jason.
You talked to Matt Bates this morning about that pedestrian, that bike counter, I think.
Yes.
I saw his email after the TAC meeting. One of the things that gives impetus and the political willpower to spend the money is showing that people will use it, showing the demand is there. So that could be the data that Matt collects. We know a ton of people use Miller Springs. Having that data show that the public wants this and will use it is going to be a big factor. So if Matt can get some data, I'll reach out to him and see if that's something that our Parks Department can. I know they work together, so I probably don't need to encourage too much. But if we can get that data and provide that for this plan, then absolutely, let's make the case and then go find the money.
Exactly.
I would just add, Gary, this plan would complement the 2050 MTP. It wouldn't, that is the overarching long-range plan. This would be like supporting that and Anita's work with rewriting the chapter on active transportation. And maybe that chapter would need to be amended after we develop this plan, but we can always amend the MTP. So they're working together. And this is just being more specific about the trails and the sidewalks and whatever else we want to put into it. That's the vision that we're proposing.
I'm kind of looking at the big picture of this with funding. If we can, like you said, if we can meld these two together, we can get more funding and get more cooperation with other organizations to build the plan. It's obviously proven that healthier living, with active transportation, healthier living, more people, less cars, less carbon footprint. You know, they're building an HEB, I think, over on Adams, but then they're going to build a subdivision. How do we get the subdivision to connect with that HEB so people can ride their bikes within a 3-mile radius, ride their bikes, walk, whatever, work at that HEB and stuff like that. But the same thing with the trails. How can we get TxDOT to pay for 9 miles of trail going along I-14 as an active transportation route? They did it in Dallas, and TxDOT was happy to pay for it because they realized that this is something that's bettering the community overall in general as a whole. They've done some stuff in Austin where they ran into that private land and they built on the Lady Bird Lake, they built a bypass bridge actually on the lake that goes around the private land. So stuff like that we like, if we can get the plan working and started, then we can probably get the funding or find the funding. I'm not a funding guy, but I'm sure you have people that know how to do all that.
I'd just like to point out that second bullet on there. At the last BPAC meeting, we talked about the fitness-friendly bike program. And I think that the concept of that program wrapped into the active transportation master plan would benefit our communities, encouraging businesses to install benches and bike racks and giving people access to the bathrooms. I think all that will benefit our community as a whole. And it seems like that's a good place. Instead of having an outside program, that would be like folding those concepts into the active transportation master plan to expand our scope and keep it all within one plan.
Any other comments?
Yes, we should.
Update of the bicycle pedestrian activities. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do here, but I'll highlight some of this stuff. I don't know, we're going to talk to this or I'll talk to it. I'd like to highlight some of this stuff. Some of it's currently, the 9/11 Memorial Stair Climb on 914 in Temple. And then.
You know what it is?
Do I know what it is?
Where it is?
It sounds like a lot of work, so no, I'm not running up no stairs.
It's at one of the stadiums.
Oh,
I don't know exactly.
probably Temple High, they got the tallest stadium.
Probably Temple High, probably the wrong place to run stairs. It seems like a lot of work. Used to be one in Bisbee, Arizona that you had to run up like 3,000 steps. Yeah, no, none of the steps were level. It's not something I really want to do. They do have the Dana Peak Trail Run. I'm not trying to leave anybody out. That's kind of, they've got the Healthy Kids Running Series in Belton going on this coming weekend, and then Dana Peak Trail Run. And then the Volks Ride out of Salado, that's a big ride. She's also implementing a run this year, part of a 5K run along with the bike ride. The Turkey Trot, which is always fun. We've done that numerous years throughout our time here. It's always a fun thing. And then 12-1, if you want to walk with a dog and walk with me, I'm actually going to try to make that walk because I've not made it yet, but I'm very interested in it. There's the Healthy Kids Running Series. Go ahead.
I'm not sure if anybody saw social media, but we recently did an asphalt overlay of the Chisholm Trail Park Trail that Healthy Kids Running Series uses. It was old, it had served its purpose. Through multiple projects happening there, we were able to get it done. But the feedback we've gotten on that from citizens just taking pictures and tagging City of Belton, Parks and Rec, has been amazing. And we're excited for that extension to happen that's going to come from 121 and feed right into the Chisholm Trail. So anticipate a lot more activity going on.
Yes, I saw that on social. Very nice. Congratulations.
Gary,
Congratulations.
on the Volks Ride.
Yeah.
We had some conversations. I talked to Berta, TxDOT's doing some bridge work out there. It sounded like she had deconflicted that it wasn't going to require a major route redesign. Have you heard anything?
So we're on the committee, we're meeting on Monday. I have talked to Berta and we went over the route change that she wanted. She gave us a couple options. We picked a different route. It doesn't change it a lot, but there is an out and back section. A lot of cyclists don't like out and back stuff, but where they're going, you're not going to really notice that you're coming back unless you're really paying attention to what you're doing. Because the area out south of where she's talking on the 100-mile route and the longer 60-mile route, the out and back section, you do a loop and then you come back on the same road. And we had people that we'd done the route and they were like, oh, we didn't even know we went on the same route. It's so desolate and different if you're going south or going north. So I don't think it's going to be a big problem. Hopefully they don't keep fixing bridges out there because it's become a big heartache for her. And then this chip seal thing that I don't know if TxDOT's doing it or whoever's doing it is just insane. And there's not a TxDOT guy here, is there? Yeah, like I don't know if you guys have been down on Hartrick's Bluff. The chip seal job they did on that road is pretty horrible. So I don't know if they improved it or made it worse, but.
Are you talking which section of Hartrick Bluff from between 93 and 436?
Yeah. Hopefully you didn't have anything to do with that.
No, that's the county.
The county inspector didn't go inspect that, and it's really disappointing the quality of work they did on that. And I don't know whether they made it better or made it worse. They got rid of some potholes, but it's still pretty bad.
We do have a widening project on the section north of 93 going on now, and the traffic signal is going to come in. And then 30% design is funded for us to widen a portion of Hartrick Bluff down to where those new subdivision entrances are. It's a big Keela project that's like Hartrick Ranch Estates. They had annexed part of the road into the city. So we've got a widening that'll go down there probably in the next 3 to 4 years. It's right now they've just funded the design. They haven't gone into doing if there's any right-of-way needed, but that is coming.
Are they implementing a bike lane in that?
I haven't seen, like I said, they've just funded the design work to start the 30% this next fiscal year. So if it's not, I will take that and run with it.
Well, as a bicyclist and a cyclist that runs one of the biggest rides in town, that is one of the major roads that everybody uses. I'm glad to see that there's going to be a light going in there. That's going to make a big difference. There's been a lot of major accidents there lately.
Yep.
But having that widen where it's getting pretty hairy with all those,
Yeah.
that subdivision going in down there and contestants
Yeah.
with cyclists and traffic, so.
And, to the earlier discussion about, comfort level, is it a striped lane or is it simply a shoulder wide enough that you've got some separation between you and the traffic? We'll see what that design looks like.
Well, hopefully it's at least a shoulder widening, at least if not something that's a little bit more protected.
Yeah. It will be an urban section road, so we're talking curb and gutter. It's not going to be rural shoulder and ditch.
Okay.
Monday I rode.
It may taper back down when you get to the south end where it goes back into the county. Then it may taper back out.
Monday I rode the Interstate 14 access road from Nolanville to Belton. It was beautiful. The chip seal was in good shape. They have a double wide shoulder that was very inviting to ride on the shoulder and stay out of traffic. It needs a little bit of sweeping, but if we did roads like that, we'd find a lot more people riding bikes.
Okay. Now we're under public comments. Regarding public comments, Killeen-Temple collects public comments from variety of sources, online, email, public meetings, social media accounts, web maps, etc. And I'm supposed to pass this over to Anita.
Yes, we received several public comments since our last BPAC meeting, and we forwarded those to the right jurisdiction. We did everything we could to try to answer as many questions as we could. And we're always open and available to keep the conversations going. There was one public comment that it got a little contentious. So after about the fourth time of going back and forth, what we did was we invited the citizen to call our office and have a conversation over the phone. That's probably the best way to handle some of those types of comments where there's a lack of understanding about a project.
Staff update. So agenda item number 12, staff update. And I get to pass this to you too.
Yes. So these are a list of our upcoming meetings through November 20th for the K-Tempo Policy Board and Technical Advisory Committee. Down in the little table here, our next meeting for BPAC is scheduled for December the 11th. And then these are our tentative dates for 2025 to meet quarterly. And we'll discuss approving those at the next meeting. I just wanted to give you all a heads up that this is what we're looking at. And I also wanted to give you an update on the bylaws. At the last BPAC meeting, y'all were agreeable, BPAC members were agreeable to having staff complete the bylaws. We've worked on them, and some of the things that y'all were agreeable to changing were to expanding the membership stakeholders, clarifying the nomination and selection process, identifying ex officio members, clarifying our officer terms and procedures for filling vacant seats, as well as changing, increasing the quorum to 50% plus one, and aligning our meetings with the Texas Open Meetings Act. When staff began working on them, some of the things that we thought were worthy of mentioning, and is one of the reasons that the bylaws aren't complete, is that especially after this conference, changing the name from BPAC to Active Transportation Advisory Committee, expanding the voting membership to include independent school districts and medical professionals, and potentially other groups at BPAC's discretion, and overhauling the purpose statement. There were some roles and responsibilities listed in the bylaws, and some of those roles and responsibilities, maybe they would be better served being inside of the active transportation master plan while expanding the scope of our purpose statement. The active, assuming once it's time to make this decision, y'all are agreeable to the name change. The Active Transportation Advisory Committee, hereby referred to as ATAC, shall advise the KTMPO Policy Board and Technical Advisory Committee on the planning and development of a multi-jurisdictional regional trail networks and initiatives in support of bicycle, pedestrian, paddlecraft, and equestrian trails, ensuring that non-motorized travel is integrated into broader transportation strategies. ATAC shall support the development and maintenance of infrastructure like sidewalks, crosswalks, and trails that are safe for all people who use on-road facilities and off-road trails, to include bicyclists, pedestrians, and equestrians. Is there any discussion?
So I have to ask, why active transportation, BPAC, bicycle pedestrian seems to say what it is? And really, you don't have to think, I mean, not have to think, you don't have to wonder, what's the active transportation advisory committee? Just throwing out there, maybe I've had this discussion already, I apologize.
Well, no, I think that's a great comment, and that's, this is just an update of why the bylaws isn't complete, and it was a recommendation, but it doesn't have to be, it's gonna be totally up to the board. So you make a valid point, Gene.
And I agree, that's a valid point. I also know politics, and if you look at like the conference we just went to, a lot of that is going, that's the, the key term. That's the term that everybody's kind of using. I like BPAC, it does encompass it. I also like active transportation, that seems to be, I don't know what they call them, keywords. The newest word to say, oh, this is the newest faddest thing. So it's kind of one of those, they talk about the BPAC in Brownsville, but it's this much of their active transportation plan. And that's where they talk about it's active transportation. And that's, Dallas is using it throughout the bigger communities. So they went to the Netherlands or Holland, Amsterdam, and did a bike study over there with them. And that's kind of where the world's going. So it's just the key terminology, the key words, the progressive thing. Again, like Anita said, it's really going to be up to the board to decide what we decide to make it, or change it or not change it. But we want to, our example is we want to expand bicycle pedestrian, and we want paddlecrafts, we want to access equestrians. There's a big movement of, just help me out with, what's that ride called in Austin? Critical mass rides, which is anything that has a wheel on it. You can go to this ride and ride it down in Austin. Well, surprisingly enough, in the last couple of weeks, there's a critical mass ride in Killeen. It has gathered like momentum like you would not believe. 20 to 30 people riding 17 miles at night with lights on their wheels, and it's just a fun ride that everybody goes on to. It was 17 miles last night, it took 3 hours. And then they also have a critical mass ride in Austin. So in Waco, it just started. So it's something that's being progressively, I mean, they're not big racers, they're just out there having fun. People of all ages, and it's called critical mass. And it's a huge thing in Austin. They closed down Congress and a bunch of streets down there for hundreds of people that ride it. It's gaining momentum. And it's a bunch of different people. And expanding, like she says, getting the medical professionals and getting the school district involved in this meeting so they can be, and I don't know how many school people actually come to the meeting and talk about safe streets, safe walkways to school and stuff, but we should have somebody here from the school district saying, yeah, that's a great idea, that's a great plan. Or to review, I'd like to expand it to more people, medical professionals, walking with the doc, that's a big thing that we try to promote. And then getting the school districts involved in our planning processes and our voting processes, because the BPAC does have a vote when we go to planning. When they go to planning and they want us to approve projects, and like I got Mike came back in here we saw him at the bike shop, said, hey, you get a vote on what you think needs to be and what doesn't need to be. And while Jason and me said in the TAC meeting, we upset a few people in the TAC meeting. They caused them to discuss what they thought was right and what was wrong. I don't know in the end if we actually had a huge influence, but we made conversations because me and him actually went through the process to vote those projects in. And we didn't agree with a lot of the city's stuff. We were close on most things, but there were a few that we were way off. But it opened the discussion. I think we have a vote in the future of Bell County and Texas in general, thinking bigger pictures of connectivity to the trail.
And I think that what Gary's referring to is the call for projects, the 2023 call for projects. There's scoring that happens with those projects, and BPAC was afforded the opportunity to score livability. Is that correct, James? Yes. So, we have a different viewpoint than technical staff members do sometimes. So
it was funny because I went to the next TAC meeting and I sat over there in the corner and there was just a couple people a little upset about how the BPAC voted on their projects. Again, but it made them, it opened the discussion. And I think we have a discussion. I think we have a voice in what happens and what goes on.
You want to contribute anything to that, James or Jason?
Jason.
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 Okay.
Next.
One comment about the medical, the level 1 trauma centers have obligations for community engagement. And they do some epidemiologic studies about the types of trauma and where it occurs. And they might have a vested interest in being participating members of this committee. I think Bearstown White's the only level 1 trauma center in our region, but it'd be worth reaching out to them if you want medical representation. And I had a question about whether incorporating the school districts would endanger our ability to achieve a quorum. If they were not regular attendees, would we still be able to conduct business if we didn't have a quorum at each meeting?
Well, that would be something that we would write into the bylaws, where we are going to be updating them to 50% plus 1.
Okay.
And so the other aspect of that quorum is that you can attend online with your camera on and be counted for quorum.
Okay.
And getting more people involved.
Yeah, I like that idea. I like the name change. I like the idea of the school districts and the medical engagement.
And just so you know that McLean's Children's Hospital, they have spoke here regarding bike safety, and we're a part of their committee that promotes bike safety.
Good.
And getting people in the community involved. Good.
The next slide here is that we're going to be having public comments for some FY 25-28 TIP amendments and some new project listings for the 2050 MTP. And the reason that I would like to introduce these types of projects to our BPAC committee is because a lot of them have to do with sidewalks or trail networking, and we just want to keep y'all up to date and encourage y'all when you hear about these, if you can make public comment. We really want to hear from the public on these matters. The public comment period begins September 23rd and ends October the 7th, excuse me. And so we'll have 3 public meetings, and there's actually a list of those projects at the table if you'd like to look at them or take a packet with you. And finally, the TxDOT Transportation Alternative Set-Aside Program grant is going to be opening up in January of 2025. And I've sent an email to TxDOT to find out when the program guide will become available so that we can share that information. It'll be shared with TAC, Policy Board, and BPAC. And if you haven't looked at the projects that were awarded in the 2023, there's a link in your packet. I highly recommend looking at them. It's very exciting for our region. There's another grant through Texas Parks and Wildlife, and it's a program grant for outdoor activity. It's going to be closing November the 1st. James, would you like to talk about our air quality, please?
They've been high in Killeen this summer, above the standard, but the average based on how they calculate it, where Killeen is right at 70 parts per billion. Temple is a little bit lower. No major concerns from the MPO on this right now.
Thank you, James.
Member comments, agenda item number 13. I'd like to make a couple comments. Next year, we really want to push what people want to see. I think Eric and Charlie coming in and talking to people like that, and getting other people involved in the conversation and talking, and getting more people involved in the meeting, whether it be online or in person. Like, we want to recognize two people. The person on the end over there, her name is Vanessa. She's from Vista Real Estate, active cyclist. Enjoys all sorts of riding. And then another person I'll introduce, and hopefully you get a chance to talk to him, is Mike. We met him at the TTAC conference. He does a really cool thing, and I'm gonna let him share what he does for a living.
Hi, Mike McCackron. I'm the CEO and owner of iZone Imaging. So we have been doing phenolic panels with graphics for 25 years. It's a spin-off from Wilson Art. And one of the areas that we've had success with our product is the Parks and Rec signage. So we work with cities, local cities, especially Temple and Belton, do a lot of signage locally, but we also do signs all over North America. So, and I've always been really, I love the trails, and anytime I get a chance, I want to hike and use the Young Mile Trails app. And, I used to do a lot of cycling, but I haven't lately. But we've been at the conference last week, and was surprised to meet them, and we're like about Temple and Killeen and all that. So it was I told about this meeting, and I just kind of stop in and see what's going on.
I want to say thank you for the signs that you all did for Miller Springs. I mean, it used to be managed by a volunteer board.
That's right.
And when the city took over management of that, they said the signs were outdated, and they took them, they were beautiful. They didn't get to see their intended lifespan.
Is they flooded?
No, there was one trail called BPAC Hollow out in Miller Springs that kind of eroded into the creek, and they wanted that taken off the trail maps. And I think they chose not to update quality trail maps by just erasing the trail. They just took the signs down. They were awesome signs.
So if you haven't worked with him, or if you're familiar with Parks and Recs and stuff, he's a great guy. The work that we saw that he'd done and the stuff that he's done is pretty amazing. And hopefully he continues to get involved in it.
I have one more member comment. And I remember the third item that I sent you on the email. I think it'd be helpful for this committee to review that Strava Metro data. And I don't know if any city currently monitors Strava Metro data, but they have a tool for city planners that shows you where people are actually riding their bikes and tracking their rides. You don't pick up the veterans that ride down First Street to the VA hospital unless they're wearing a GPS watch or phone. But people who do ride for recreation and track their rides upload their data. And there's a massive amount of data that's pretty detailed about the roads that are preferred in our counties. And I wish we could get a report from that presented at this meeting.
Okay.
And when you're talking about the amount of people, 125 million people belong to Strava. And it's a constant joke, like, if it's not on Strava, it didn't happen. But it's kind of like the heat map that Apple does on their stuff, but it's a lot better. You can actually design a map and say, I want to use the most used common roads. And it'll actually design you a map to go walk, run, ride, any of those features. Just if you go to another city, say, I want to do a 20-mile bike route, and I want to use the most common routes, it will actually design the route and it'll correlate all the people, what people in that town and community do. And I would like to see that too. It'd be a great resource to see.
I'm interested in that mode when I visit other cities. I think that it could be if we want to foster tourism here, it could be a tool that we want to promote. promote and say these are our county's most popular rides.
Any other comments?
Well, let me follow up on Keller. What do you see as the most popular rides?
If I were going to answer that, I would call up Strava and look at their heat map.
Yeah.
And I think the things that would be highlighted would be the east-west access road along Highway 14.
Right.
And some of the roads out to the east side of I-35 near Salado.
Okay.
That are less traffic roads. Gary probably has a better view than I do. I have not looked at it recently to see, but the more traffic a road gets, the brighter it appears. So the dark ones don't have any trails. The ones that are somewhat used are red. The heavier used are orange. The ones that get a lot of use are bright yellow or white.
Good. And Keller's right, it's the I-14 frontage road. It's used a lot from Belton to Nolanville. That'll do a lot of stuff south of Temple, starting from just 5th Street. And then you're starting to see a lot more stuff out east of town over by the dump, because you can go past the dump and you can get out into sections of that. The problem is there's a lot of gravel out there. So depending on what kind of bike you're riding, the north side is not well used because of all the construction. It's kind of been shut down for the last couple of years. But there, like Keller said, if you get on that Strava map, it will design you a pretty good decent route.
It's free to create an identity on there. Once you sign in for a free account, you get access to the consumer portion of it, but they do have a research-oriented portion that is open to city transportation specialists. I have not figured out how to get into that. Sparta Road, north of 439 also lights up. That quiet stretch on the east boundary of Fort Hood gets a lot of bike traffic.
Oh, yeah. Cattle, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And my goal, if there's no more other member comments, my goal is to try to keep this meeting with a speech person talking, about an hour and a half per meeting, so we don't all fall asleep and I don't bore you all to death. And I met that I missed it by 1 minute this time. So if there's any other comments, I will call the meeting adjourned at 4:02.